Ja, då ska vi gå över till Saniona och vi har en dansk företrädare som har valt att tala engelska med oss. Det brukar vara det enklaste sättet, men vi kan lugnt ställa frågor och på svenska. Det är inga som helst problem. Varmt välkommen!
Thank you very much, and it's a privilege to be the last company presentation today, and thank you very much to everybody for staying around. So Saniona is a Danish biotech company listed here in Stockholm at Nasdaq Small Cap. We have about 3,000 Swedish investors and about 2,000 in Denmark. So we usually show this one first. We'll be talking about some forward-looking statements, but this is really the first slide. And it starts with a quite bold statement. Saniona has 2 drugs that works. It's actually not my statement. It comes from our new chairman of the board, Don Bettisi. He's an American. He really likes to give bold statements, as many Americans do. He was the CEO of a major US biotech company listed on Nasdaq. Then he moved to Denmark 6 years ago, and since then he has been doing a lot of business in Europe and taking also European companies to the US Nasdaq. So I've known him for about 15 years or so, and I've been chasing him all the way since he came to Denmark, asked him to join our board. 1 year ago, I actually succeeded in doing that, so he's been functioning as that for a year. And then I asked him, why did you actually decide to come to a humble company like Saniona? And he said, Saniona is a fantastic company. Saniona has a drug that works. And that might seem a simple thing, but it is actually very, very few biotech companies that can say that for sure. That has been through the clinical studies that really demonstrates the compound works and should be registered for as a new drug. Many companies are doing phase 2 studies, hoping to get there, but to actually have proven it is something different. Then a couple of months ago, Thomas Feldthus and I went to JP Morgan in San Francisco to present to investors and others. And Don Bettisi was also there, and he joined us for some meetings. And there he again said, when he opened the meeting, Saniona is a fantastic company. Saniona has 2 drugs that works. So that is now the statement I put in here. And it is, of course, true. We have a compound that's called tesofensine, which has a unique weight loss properties. It's probably the most effective weight loss drug in the world. It has been through the last clinical studies, the last phase 3 studies now with our partner Medix in Mexico, and showed very, very good effects, as it has shown also in earlier studies. And it is now in the registration phase, going for an approval, hopefully by the end of this year or early next year. And after that, we see other markets opening for that. We'll get a royalty on that very interesting market, which is about $250 million in Mexico alone. So that was the first drug. The next drug is called Tesomet, and it's actually a combination of tesofensine and another drug called metropolone. And this is a drug that we in Saniona intend to develop all the way to the market and also market ourselves. It can be done because this is in small indications. It's again a drug that will take away the craving for food, and therefore there are certain eating disorders, rare eating disorders, where this really has a very interesting profile. And one is called Preveli Syndrome. It's a genetic disease where these patients simply cannot stop craving for food, and they can get extremely big and die from that. We are in phase 2, have shown that it works, and we are targeting $1 billion market opportunity. And in parallel, we do a similar thing in another eating disorder, also rare eating disorder, called hypothalamic obesity. Now it's not longer a genetic disease, it's a disease that's acquired by getting a damage to the appetite center in the brain, and suddenly these lean people can get extremely big from one day to the other. So also an orphan disease, and a billion-dollar market opportunity. We just started the studies in Denmark just about a week ago. So that's one part of Saniona. The other part is our advanced drug discovery machine. And this is particular within a field called ion channels, where we are among the leaders in the world and have done many partnerships with pharma companies in that field. We are now moving more and more compounds from that pipeline into the clinic, and we have 2 internally developed programs that both can go for large market segments and also for smaller orphan indications that we could move ourselves. And then we have 2 that are with partners in schizophrenia and in ataxia. I'll get back to that. So we have been able to make a number of partnerships over the years, also with the big pharma companies, with Pfizer, with Johnson & Johnson, with Boehringer Ingelheim, and we'll continue to do that. And we know most of the people in the field and have done it many times before. I'll now show the pipeline, the proprietary pipeline, which I already indicated, Tesomet, developed for these rare eating disorders and in phase 2 development. So that should be reaching a readout later this year, enabling us to move into phase 3. So there are 2 other programs here that in our internal pipeline. One is SAN711. We just announced about months ago that this compound has now been through all the preclinical development, is ready for going into the clinic. And this is really a completely new principle for treating very severe pain conditions and also condition with itching that have no treatment today. Completely new principle, ready to go into man. And the IK program is a principle of immune modulation. It's developed for colitis, for Crohn's disease. Again, a totally new principle where we have moved that very significantly over the last year and now very close to candidate selection. So the partnered pipeline, we have made a number of partnerships as mentioned. I have talked about the obesity product that we are developing with medics in Mexico. We have a product which we spun out also from the ion channel platform developed by Cadent Therapeutics. We have a ownership in that company and also will get royalties from that. So Cadent just raised $40 million for the phase 2 development of this drug. And we are hanging on that upside. We have a deal with Boehringer Ingelheim in the schizophrenia field where they paid us €5 million in upfront and €4 million last year when they reached the development milestone. And then there is the cocaine addiction program, which is developed by US primary investigators. We are not putting money into that program either. It's a product that's out of patent. We are considering how we will be able to patent the product, but so far we are just waiting for the data to read out there. We have seen the interim data just a couple of months ago, and it was sufficiently interesting for the investigators to continue to the end of that. So how does tesofensine work? Why does this give such a dramatic weight loss? It's because it can normalize appetite in the appetite center by 2 different mechanisms. It will reduce the craving for food in the reward center of the brain, and also it increases fat burn in the general in the body. And Tesomet is almost the same. It's just that we have added the beta blocker, which means that we will have a product which is without any increase in heart rate. Most of obesity drugs will give increase in heart rate. This one does not. And also we have a completely new patent estate on that new product. So first about the medics collaboration and the obesity deal we have with them. They completed this phase 3 study, ready for filing for the regulatory authorities called COFEPRIS in Mexico, and they claim they should be able to commercialize from next year, and we will get royalties from that. Then they also have the rights in Argentina, where they plan to file just 1 year later and commercialize in 2021. We will receive double-digit royalties from that sales, and also we own all the rights to tesofensine in the rest of the world, including the data they have generated. Also, we can use the tablets and so on they have produced. So this is just about the phase 3 study they did in about 400 patients. Looked beautiful, just like earlier studies we've seen. It also works in Mexicans, and about 10% weight loss, and also effect on glycemic parameters, we say, also should be effective in diabetic conditions. So in total, tesofensine has now been tested in more than 1,800 patients, so it's very well known to be a safe drug in 18 phase 1, 8 phase 2, and 1 phase 3 study. And also Tesomet has now been into several clinical studies. So it's very seldom that you have such a strong safety package on a drug at this stage. I talked about the combination product, tesofensine plus metoprolol, and here we have the new patent position. This we are developing for these rare eating disorders, Preveli Syndrome, Hypothalamic Obesity. And we have just completed the phase 2A study, the placebo-controlled part of that. I have reported that, and this is now continuing into an open-label study. And all of this information, these exploratory studies, should lead into the final studies, phase 2B, phase 3 studies, probably by the end of the year, and potentially a filing in 2021 or early 2022. In the other indication in hypothalamic obesity, we have just started, as I said, and we hope we will be able to read out around year-end and then go directly into phase 3, because here we actually know the dose that should be used, 0.5 milligram, which is the same we've used in the obesity studies. It's more complicated in Preveli, as I'll get back to. The market opportunity, as I said earlier, here should be very interesting, calculated, estimated at 3 billion in Preveli, 1 billion in hypothalamic obesity. I probably don't have time to go into the details of what Preveli syndrome is, but it is about that these patients cannot control their ability to eat. They want to eat all of the time, and they get very big and die from that. They both die from the obesity, but also they can eat so much that the bowel actually ruptures. It's about 1/3 of the patients that actually die from the disease because of this hypophagia, it's called, this craving for food. And it could be this bowel rupture, it could be choking when they cannot sink the food. So we decided to go into this indication, and we did first 9 adult patients at a dose of 0.5 milligram per day. And we saw very, very nice effect on craving and also on weight loss in this. And then we decided in the second part of the study in teenagers to go at a dose that was 0.125. This was the data that we saw in hypophagia. So this craving for food actually, as it appears, totally disappeared over these 3 months of treatment, and a weight loss here of about 7%. But you could also see that some of the patients dropped out of the study, so probably some of them had too high a dose. We have looked into the market opportunity in Preveli, and clearly there is, from other companies that have been in the field, is a very interesting opportunity with a price of around $100,000 to $200,000 in US, about 20,000 patients in US, Europe, and Japan combined. We think we can get to the market with a low investment, a very small clinical studies, phase 3 study, around 100 patients. And also, we should be able to commercialize the drug ourselves. So the second part of the PVS study was in teenagers, in adolescents, done at a quarter of the original dose. And we have also completed that and have seen that the drug was very well tolerated. All patients completed, and there was a decrease in hypophagia, but not statistically different from placebo at this dose. So we are now continuing the study at the mid-dose 0.25, we have established a very effective dose, a dose that's probably not effective in many, and then we will go for 0.25 in the pivotal studies. And that's very, very big conclusions we've been able to drive out of these actually 18 patients, 2 very small studies, that we have a promising efficacy and effect both on hyperphagia and also on weight, and also that we've been able now to establish the dose of 0.25. So that was Preveli syndrome. Then I can also show you just 1 or 2 slides on the hypothalamic obesity, because it's actually very similar to Preveli, but now it's not a genetic disease. It's because there is a damage to the appetite center in the brain. It could be a small cancer that will move into and make damage to the appetite center. And suddenly these patients from one day to the other will grow very big. There have been other drugs, but only a couple of drugs that have been evaluated in that indication. One is a drug called sibutramine, which was on the market, has later gone out of the market. It showed some efficacy, and we're actually doing a similar study to that one in Copenhagen right now. And tesomet appears to be double as effective as sibutramine in the general obese population. So we are very optimistic about that. Also, a company called Safdien developed a compound there. They have given up, but the compound actually worked. So we think there is a nice opportunity also in that. So we have 2 shots on goals on the eating disorders. Now this is the ion channel platform where there's quite a number of programs. And of course we will not take all of these programs into our own pipeline. We may take 1 or maybe even 2 of those into our own pipeline. But these are mostly positioned for partnerships. And we are constantly discussing with partners out there for the specific programs. We have already partnered, as I mentioned, the CAD 1883 programs in tremor and ataxias. We are now ready to go into man with SAN 711 in the pain field. In schizophrenia, we are developing it with Boehringer Ingelheim, the IK program in Crohn's disease, and then 2 other programs we put on the list here. So there are many opportunities for making new partnerships here. And that is, as I said, what we have been doing over the years and have in total generated about 207 million Swedish kronor in sales on these partnerships, which is actually more than we have raised on the public market. So last year has been extremely hectic for us. We started a number of things that you can see here, and all of them we have now read out and can say that we reached the milestones. So SAN 711 in the top, that is the pain program where we had selected the candidate about a year ago, and now we say we have completed it successfully, ready to go into man. We made a spin-out, Scandion Oncology, in December 2017, and then that company went public here in Sweden in November last year. We did the 2 phase 2 studies in Preveli syndrome, and they are both now successfully reported. We've done a number of other things, other clinical and preclinical studies on tesomet, which you may have seen press releases on, but it's of course not that exciting. It's just to show that we have when we use the new tablet, we get the right blood concentration, and it's toxicity studies, and also another combination study. But these are actually very important studies for us to enable us to go to long-term testing. Now, very importantly, well, there was also the Caton one here on the financing and going into phase 2 with their ataxia program, and the Boehringer milestones also was reached very successfully. But the important one is the tesofensine Medics phase 3, which was just recruited at that point in time. Now we have successfully completed that. And also the interim on the 2359, the cocaine addiction program, went very nice. So there are also a lot of things that will happen Right now, also, we just started the hypothalamic obesity study, which was not on the other one. But within the Preveli syndrome, we will have data from this open label extension soon. We will initiate phase 2b/3 studies, and also we will get results from the phase 2 studies in hypothalamic obesity. From the medics side, from Mexico, we expect to be able to announce filing and approval and launch in Mexico, and then later on in Argentina. From the research platform, the start of phase 1 studies in clinical studies on the pain program, candidate selection on the colitis program, and then we also expect new deals. So also a heavy news flow in front of us as we see it. So I will leave it there. Thank you very much for staying along.
Och välkommen.
Tack.
Jag måste säga att det är lite komplicerat om man inte utbildar läkare.
Ja.
Du, om vi börjar med mer övergripande frågeställningen. Ni har som målsättning att börja med att titta på ett stort antal produktidéer och utveckla dem till en viss stadium och sen sälja dem vidare. Det är den basala idén.
That is how we started the company, to just do what we have been used to do, being an innovation hub for new products to the pharma industry. And we have delivered so many new, interesting, and actually some of them revolutionizing treatment principles, and develop it to a certain stage and pharma to go. And we are still doing that in most of our programs. But we actually do also now see the opportunity for having a higher upside to ourselves in a few of these programs. So we select programs where we can develop it in small clinical studies directly to the market. So we have a couple of shots on goal there where we should be able to have the full market opportunity for ourselves. And this is, as I said, small indications with a big market potential.
Så ni bibehåller den gamla uppläggningen att ta fram olika idéer fram till fas 1 kanske, och sen sälja av, samtidigt som ni väljer ut några som ni verkligen tror på, som ni kommer att gå vidare med fas 2, eventuellt till och med kanske fas 3.
Yes, that's exactly true. Not just phase 2 and phase 3, but also actually bringing it to registration and on the market ourselves. That is the ambition.
Och till och med alltså gå vidare över fas 3 så att det blir ett fullgott läkemedel, och ni ska sälja det medlet över världen sen. Egen säljorganisation eller...
Yes, this is exactly our strategy, and it is certainly possible within these indications I talked about. The Preveli Syndrome should be clinical studies around 100 patients or so. It's all organized in very few centers. In Denmark, there's just one center, probably also here in Sweden. In US, maybe a handful that are really treating these. So it is possible with a very small sales force, and also because this is a very well organized society to actually do that as a very small company.
Innebär att ni alltså medvetet väljer ut ganska sällsynta sjukdomar där ni kan bli dominerande och kanske enda bolaget som arbetar med det, och det är då det är möjligt att ha en egen säljorganisation över hela världen?
Yes, companies like ours have done that before in these rare diseases. It's definitely possible. Of course, it will need quite significant development in the company and new competence into the company. But we are building along that road.
Ska vi se om finns det frågor? Inte än så länge. Hur kommer det sig att ni gick in på ätstörningsområdet så kraftfullt som ni har gjort?
Yes, of course it started with that we had the drug. We had a drug that really is able to control the food intake, both control the appetite but also control the not necessarily food intake, simply craving for food. It's very, very effective in that respect. We have known that for several years. And that, of course, can be used in many different indications. Obesity is obvious, but also in diabetes, it's a very interesting opportunity because diabetes comes from overweight, type 2 diabetes in most cases, and therefore we will be able, by reducing weight, also to get these out of the diabetic zone. We know that the drug works in that respect, at least in pre-diabetics, they can get down into the normal blood sugar level. So that is another very big opportunity with this. A third one in the big metabolic field is the NASH, is the fatty liver, where again losing weight in that range where we see it here, you would get the fat out of the liver and you would be able to treat that disease very effectively. So we are convinced it would also work there. But these indications are very big. You would take very, very big clinical studies, thousands and thousands of patients. We would not, as a small company, be able to do that and get that through regulation. We will need a big pharma partner to do that. So in the small indications in the rare disease area, where it's also the craving for food that is the driving force, there we can do it ourselves and keep the market rights for ourselves.
Hur många procent av diabetespatienterna, cirka över 400 miljoner i hela världen, kan ni räkna med att behandla? Alltså i världen finns enligt tidigare talare 425 miljoner personer som lider av diabetes.
Yeah.
Hur många av dem ungefär har en fetma som behöver behandlas via ert preparat, om det blir färdigt?
Yes, the type 2 diabetes indication, it's almost exclusively driven by obesity. So I would say 80% of all type 2 diabetics get their diabetes because they are overweight or obese.
Då finns med andra ord mycket stora potentialer för det preparatet.
I think the potential is extreme in that indication. And it has been shown over and over again in many different studies that if you reduce weight significantly, 10, 15, 20 kilograms, then you will be able to get out of the high blood sugar level into the normal range in most of the patients.
Det var en imponerande lista du presenterade över vad ni har fullföljt under 2018. Hur kom det sig att ni klarar av så mycket? De flesta läkemedelsutvecklingsbolag har en eller annan punkt och ni serverar 10-tal. Ni är ändå trots allt en ganska liten organisation.
We are a very small organization, and especially within the clinical development, most of what we do is by consultants and by contract houses. But it has been set up in a very efficient way so that we only, with this organization, that's virtual organization, are able to just increase the number of studies. But I think we also reached our limit with the current organization. We have really been very, very busy last year.
Du berättade förut att ni hade ungefär 3000 aktieägare i Sverige och 2000 i Danmark. Finns det betydande ägande utanför de länderna också?
Yes, I didn't mention that we actually have quite a few investors in Switzerland. We've been doing some launch investor presentation in Switzerland, and they have bought up in our shares. So that's a very specific thing. I think there are a few around in US, in UK, but mostly we are a Scandinavian company with a presence here. We are definitely presenting to potential investors all over the world. We've had a lot of meetings in the US, more than 50 meetings. In Europe, we have been to, as I mentioned, Geneva, Zurich. We've been to Paris. We'll go to Frankfurt, Amsterdam. We'll go to Tel Aviv. So we are out speaking with more international investors, and also we are, of course, considering to go from the Swedish stock exchange to Nasdaq US. So we see the moving in that direction, but right now we are based. We have our investor base here.
Slutligen, Ni fångar upp ett stort antal idéer som går att exploatera vidare. Hur lyckas ni med detta? Det är inte bara en sak utan det är ett antal produkter ni håller på med samtidigt. Hur lyckas ni få tag i det?
So the ideas comes out of our own research. We are about 20 researchers in the company. As I said, we are leading within this specific technology that's called ion channels. And we are well recognized in that field. So all the pharma companies knows that we are there. So the ideas comes out of the technology base we have from the medical knowledge we have. And then we just try to make drugs, new chemicals that works exactly on these new targets. And then when we have the target, then we know the drug is at the target, we can develop it into preclinical development phase 1. And along that road, either in research or in development, some of the big pharma partners will look at it and maybe take over the development from there.
Stort, varmt tack för att du kom och intresserade oss för ett spännande bolag. Tack så du ha.
Lycka till.
Tack.